to the November 13th, 2025 City of Grand Rapids Planning Commission meeting. We're going to get started on our cases here soon, but I will just run through kind of our normal procedure. We are going to have presentations from staff for every case, and then the applicant will have an opportunity to come up to the microphone and give us any additional information they'd like to. We'll then open up the public comment period or public hearing, where if you're here from the public and you want to provide comment, you can come up to the microphone. Make sure to address the commission and not the audience, and you'll have up to 3 minutes to give us your thoughts. After we hear from you, the applicant will have an opportunity to come up and respond to any of the comments they hear, and then we will deliberate and make a decision. Keep in mind that we are streaming live on Facebook and YouTube, and also that staff provides us with draft resolution language with findings both for approval and denial that we are able to use as we'd like. So if you see us reading, we probably are, but we're also modifying it as we go as appropriate for each case, and nothing has been decided beforehand. With that, let's do conflicts of interest. Does anyone have any conflicts they need to talk to us about?
I have two. 1300 Front is one of my projects, and then 220 Wealthy is a pure project, and we've determined in the past that anything that's going through our office I have a conflict with. So.
Okay, thanks for that. Do I have a motion or a discussion? I think they're both pretty straightforward, and yeah.
I will make a motion that Commissioner Swem has a conflict on 2350 Leonard, 1300 Front and 220 Wealthy.
Do I have support?
Support.
Okay, motion support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then we'll just ask you to step out for those two. Any others? Okay, hearing none, then we'll get started. We have a couple things to review before our public hearing, so we'll get started on the 2350 Leonard presentation.
All right, I'll ask our Historic Preservation Planner, Rhonda Baker, to come up and give you an overview about what the request is and what your role or responsibility is as the Planning Commission.
I don't have this fancy stuff. Essentially, this is just kind of part of the process of becoming a historic landmark or historic district in the city of Grand Rapids. The ordinance requires that the preliminary draft report be presented to the Planning Commission as part of that process. Just to glean any comments, or if you have any recommendations, those will be deferred back to the study committee as they formulate their final report. So that is exactly what it is. It's just part of the process. If you don't have any, that's absolutely fine. If you do, I'll be happy to forward them. It's the final process is that final report goes to City Commission with any comments or recommendations you have. Those will also accompany it. It doesn't normally come back here, but if you really want to see the final report, we can definitely make that happen as well.
And Rhonda, if it becomes designated locally, can you explain the difference between the federal and local designation?
Yeah, they are on the National Register of Historic Places as of 2023. This is the next step the owners wish to take to help to further protect the property. Believe it or not, National has no enforcement. It is honorary status. The only time they review anything is if you're using their tax credits or if you're using federal funding to do work on the property. So to actually protect the property for the future, you need local designation, which is what the owners are seeking.
And when you say protection, you're talking about redevelopment or significant changes to the property itself?
Yes, anything basically to the outside of the house or property would have to go through an extra review process, similar to Heritage Hill.
And typically at that point, you'll note in Article 2 of the zoning ordinance that we work really hard to minimize the conflicts between zoning regulations and historic preservation. So much of the ordinance relative to site layout and building element standards is deferred to the Historic Preservation Commission or the Historic Preservation Planner. Any use restrictions or requirements would stay with the Planning Department or the Planning Commission.
Well, everyone had a chance to review the report. That was very thorough and in our packet. Does anyone have any questions or comments, things that we want to be passed on as part of this process? My understanding is that it's going for historic designation based on the architectural.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't think a motion is needed, so there is?
No.
Oh, okay.
Agreed.
Threw me for a moment. Yep. So if there's no further comment, thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Cool. All right, we will do 1300 Front Northwest.
The next item on the agenda is a request from Studio Core 3. They received approval for a banquet hall and live entertainment venue with alcohol and a parking waiver on October 10th, 2024. Before the expiration of their approval, they did submit a letter asking for a 6-month extension. And so that is what is before you today. They're requesting a 6-month extension of the special land use approval.
Awesome. Thanks, Elizabeth. And yeah, based on this letter, it seems pretty consistent with the reasons that, or the justification that we've given in the past to approve these kinds of extensions based on construction issues and permitting and cost things that weren't known at the time of approval. All right. But we will need a motion for this one.
I would make a motion that we grant the extension.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, and now on to 220 Wealthy Street Southeast, and Laura will take us through this one. Oh, wait, you have to go for this one, too. This is 220 Wealthy. Yeah.
I'll leave again.
Okay. Thanks, Brian.
So the next item on the agenda is 220 Wealthy Street Southeast. This is a request to waive the active use requirement for a new parking structure. This case came before the Planning Commission on October 9th, and at the time it was presented, the Planning Commission decided to table a decision to give the applicant additional time to have some neighborhood engagement and revise their plans to include enhanced materials, additional architectural treatment, and landscaping to mitigate the lack of an active use on the ground floor. The applicant has, they hosted an open house on November 3rd. I will defer to them to describe more about that meeting. And I will briefly bring you back to date with the plans in question and let you know what the proposed changes are. So as a reminder, this property is in the TNTCZ, Traditional Neighborhood Transitional City Center Zone District. It's on the south side of Wealthy Street, bounded by Logan, Jefferson, and vacated Cass Avenue. There's a traditional business area, low-density residential, and mixed-density residential to the east and to the south. The city center is to the north of this property. I will also mention that parking structures are a permitted use in the TCC zone district. If a parking structure is constructed, including a ground floor active use, it would never need to come to Planning Commission. That application and the construction of that would be potentially approved administratively as long as it met all the requirements of the zoning ordinance. So in this case, because it's not attached to the Children's Hospital under construction and there is no ground floor active use proposed, that is why it's before you today. So the site plan hasn't changed. As a reminder, the parking structure will be located on the south side of the property. The access will be through the drive off Jefferson Avenue, and that will provide the main access to the parking structure, the north side of the parking structure, which is internal to the site. There's a secondary access to the parking structure that is intended to be for maintenance vehicles only. The public entrance will be the one off the main drive from Jefferson. The applicant has provided some additional landscaping details you can see on this slide here. The plan submitted at the previous meeting was not as detailed as this, so there's more information provided on this plan. The parking structure is 5 levels, and here is the south and the west elevations. The west elevation faces Jefferson, and the south elevation faces Logan. As you can see on the elevations, there are some additional features that have been included on the plans. Decorative mesh panels will be included on the elevations. There is area on the center of the west elevation that will be dedicated for a future mural. And at the ground floor level of both the entire length of the west elevation and a portion of the south elevation will have a perforated metal screen installed just in front of the parking structure, intended to mimic storefront windows and to provide a little bit of ground floor interest and architectural detail there. So the zoning ordinance requires that if a property is on the corner, the ground floor, active ground floor use should be on one entire side, should wrap around the corner and extend at least 25% on the other street frontage. So that explains the decision to, and staff directed the applicant to adhere to that requirement with this as well, that at the south elevation, these additional details are included on a portion of that elevation. It meets the intent of that requirement, the 25% on the secondary street frontage. And also, as you can see, because of the angle of the parking deck, if this ground floor perforated metal screen were extended, there starts to be a conflict with the angle of the parking ramp and the level of the parking, or the mesh screen at the ground floor. So several letters of support and in opposition to the request have been received. Letters of support discuss this is a solution to the need for parking. They support Mary Free Bed services and the potential challenges of a ground floor active use at this location. Letters of concern discuss impacts on the pedestrian experience without the ground floor active use and potential impacts on surrounding residential properties. And one of these impacts are light shed from the parking structure to the south to the residential properties across Logan. And, there could be ways to mitigate that. For instance, the light fixtures within the structure could be placed specifically behind pillars, and they could be recessed to help prevent some of that light wash from extending from the property onto neighboring properties. So in sum, we are asking the Planning Commission to consider whether the proposed design elements meet the intent of the materials requirements and mitigate the lack of ground floor active use. Does anybody have questions for me?
Thanks, Laura. Any questions for Laura? Nope. Okay, thank you. We will have the applicant come up now. So you can use the arrows or the mouse. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Darren McKinnon. I'm owner's representative for Mary Free Bed, and I'm joined by
Bob Van Rees, Director of Facilities.
So there's a short presentation we wanted to take you through. It was in your packet, so I believe you've seen it in the past if you had a moment. But if you have any questions, we're happy to stop. But the intent is to go pretty quickly. So just starting off, did not want to make assumptions about people's familiarity with Mary Free Bed as an organization. It's a community organization that's been around since the 1890s, started by a group of local women that raised money to endow a single bed for children that couldn't afford care. And so from there, it has grown to one of the largest not-for-profit rehabilitation facilities in the country, based right here in Grand Rapids on Wealthy Street. So certainly a community gem to be proud of. The rendering that Laura showed earlier is kind of showing it here once again, but it's just some highlights of the project. We are slated to open the Children's Hospital on the lower left here is on track to open next fall. The entire project is funded by grants and donations. It's going to be a LEED certified project. It will add 24 inpatient rehabilitation pediatric rooms to the Mary Free Bed campus. It will also include specialized therapy gyms for those receiving treatment, both inpatient and outpatient, and extended outpatient services in general. This is one of our lovely patients at the hospital recently, and her parents brought her there, I'm sure, in a vehicle. 2025 parking study did indicate that we need 332 parking spaces to meet the demand for the next 5 years. So our intent is to exceed that slightly, so because of the 5-year being a pretty short timeline, but we are trying to work within the footprint that we have allotted for the project. The existing garages that we have on campus are at capacity. Patients, visitors, and staff frequently park on public parking spots in the street and other opportunities. So by building this, we're hoping to alleviate some of the on-street pressures that the neighbors have experienced. And in order to open the project at all, the hospital, we do need this deck. The existing campus without this hospital is at capacity. This new hospital will add more patients, more visitors, more doctors, more nurses, and more support staff. We're also doing additional build out in what we call the West Addition on the north side of Wealthy, adding 20 more rooms there. So the hospital is growing, and all the ancillary people that come along with the growing hospital need a place to put their vehicle. Mary Free Bed patients, as I said, and you saw in the picture previously, the vast majority of the people who come to Mary Free Bed have some form of physical limitation. And so the demand on accessible parking is greater than most. Therefore, the ground level of the new deck is ideal for that kind of parking. And if we put the active use in, which we're trying to avoid, it just forces the people with that limitation to have to go up a staircase, negotiate an elevator, or just makes their commute to the hospital that much more challenging. And as was talked about in the last meeting, we don't charge for parking, Mary Free Bed. It's free parking for all patients, visitors, and staff. So this isn't really a revenue generation thing. It's more about serving the community for the hospital. Specifically on the active use requirements, as I said earlier, that ground floor real estate is really valuable for people that need to have an accessible parking space. So we're trying to really prioritize that for the parking, which is what this project is about. We do have some bad soils. We need to dig down, and we want to try to keep the building as least imposing as possible to the surrounding. So if we can have some below grade parking, and we're balancing that with a high water table, but if we have some below grade parking, that what does limit the visual implication of the building on the neighbors. If we do the at grade active use, it does physically block our ability to get a ramp down below. There's no way to have a ramp above and below. It just, the geometry does not work. So by requiring the active use, it precludes the option for any below grade parking at all. Obviously adds cost. When we have to put the active use space in, we don't get the benefit of parking out of it. Mary Free Bed as an organization doesn't really have a use to put in this active use space, and they're not in the business of leasing out retail space to third parties. So we would have to find some operational function within the hospital that we could put remotely from the main campus. We've had some discussion about what that could be, but ideally we don't build it at all. As some of the letters said, we've got some other property owners that own some of the active use space along Wealthy and Sheldon. Those developments have built these active use spaces, and they're actively marketing it to find a user. So that will put us in the position of competing with existing assets that are at this time unused. And then as far as an active use in general, we find that the hospital itself is we hope to have it be an extremely active use, and it is on the same parcel. It is not physically connected, but it's on the same parcel of real estate just at the north end. We were asked to reach out to the neighbors, which we did. There's a number of letters in your packet, both, as Laura said, for and against. We did send postcards to all the addresses within 350 feet, which the city provided. We also made specific outreaches to neighborhood organizations, including Seeds of Promise and the school next door, as well as the Heritage Commons townhomes. We had a open house on November 3rd. It was attended by quite a few people in the neighborhood. A lot of that conversation, well, just jump right to the next slide. That conversation was more about, our summary of that is that the idea that the garage itself was seen as something that was unwanted. As Laura mentioned, this is a permitted use in the zoning district, so we do intend to build a parking deck. It's really just about, are we going to put an active use in, or are we going to be able to build it without? But in general, from some of the people that we did reach out to, we got positive feedback, and as Laura said, positive feedback for Mary Free Bed in general, positive impact for how Mary Free Bed maintains their existing assets, and a shared goal, particularly the daycare and the school, of improving pedestrian safety and slowing traffic on Jefferson in particular. And then a mutual interest in reducing on-street parking demand, which this would obviously do. And then, again, just acknowledging that existing active use spaces are available and currently vacant. So, opportunities and constraints. So the parking, we want to maximize the number of parking spaces we can build at the lowest per unit cost possible, right? So if we're building a parking deck and we're adding active use space, we've got to bring in a lot of other systems that aren't necessarily required for an open parking deck, so that adds cost. It also reduces the number of spaces. So at the end of the day, it has a negative impact on the cost per unit, cost per parking space. As I mentioned, we've got some bad soil conditions. It does create an opportunity for some below grade, like I mentioned earlier. Once you get into below grade parking, that does bring in a requirement of free air ventilation air. You've got vehicles operating below grade, you need to have mechanical ventilation or free air. We're trying to do with the free air system, thus the perforated metal panel system you'll see in a second. The studio parking deck, hard to say, is something that we think looks pretty nice, and we want to kind of mimic some of those design features. We have some samples here we can pass around in a minute of what is a flex facade. That's the brand name of the material that Studio Park uses, available in different colors. The images you see in the packet are Mary Free Bed's corporate colors, but that doesn't mean it has to be that. We're still open to what that could look like. And then obviously the desire for the whole building to match the other buildings on property. Laura kind of already showed this. I can leave this up here when we're done if you have comments, but we think that this is a nice way to simulate what an active use space would look like from the street. Maintains our mechanical ventilation or our natural ventilation requirements, and also has some enhanced landscaping and design features on the building itself. And then the same thing on Logan. Other pedestrian amenities, what we focused a lot on is a kitty corner on the property going towards the main hospital. We've got this intersection at Cass and Wealthy. We understand by building this deck, we're going to create a lot more pedestrian activity there. So we are in the process of talking to the city about enhancing that crosswalk with a pedestrian activated hawk signal and maybe something a little more enhanced than your standard crosswalk striping. That's subject to discussion with the city and make sure we're within their ordinance. And this is kind of the rendering we've created from the intersection of Logan and Cass. We think is rather nice. And then this is the opposite end looking back at the deck and the hospital. This is just a colored site plan showing the both buildings and the landscaping proposed and the circulation for pedestrians and vehicles on site. And then we have some material samples which we're happy to hand out of the flex facade material and the perforated metal if any of the commissioners are interested. That's all. Any questions?
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, does anyone have questions for the applicant? Go ahead.
On the materials, is this the intended color palette? Is that the intention of presenting this?
Not necessarily on the flex facade. Do you want to hand those, Bob? So we've got a couple different materials to talk about. So the green and orange bands you see, that's the flex facade that Bob's got right there. We used the green and orange. We realized last round they were just kind of shown as gray. Those are placeholders. Like I said, those are Mary Free Bed's corporate colors. Those could really be anything. We're playing with the idea of rainbows. There's whatever color Sherwin-Williams make essentially is an option. On the perforated panels, the intent is to, so that's a sample of the perforated material and it's a sample of the color that perforated metal would be. The intent is to match the colored glass, which we also have. It's a little heavier, but this is on the hospital on the upper floors. It will also be on the stair towers. So the intent is to kind of make the perforated metal look like the blue glass.
I guess the, as we review, I'm trying to figure out how to word this. I guess is the commitment to do colors versus a plain or matching color to the concrete? I think that makes a difference.
Absolutely.
To me. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, what I would say, the commitment is not necessarily the orange and green. We're putting that as a placeholder because there's, as you might imagine, committees that want to weigh in on what those, but it would absolutely be a colorful element.
Okay.
What colors they are, if they're even solid or beyond that is, and even this mural is a placeholder, right? There's going to be a cohesive theme there that's TBD.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about the mural. So you are absolutely planning for and budgeting for a mural?
Yes.
Okay, great.
We're working with the local artist group, Lions and Rabbits, that are helping with a number of artistic features in the main hospital, and they'd be involved in this as well.
I have a question about the, I understand in terms of the Logan, is it the Logan Street side, how the angle of that prevents the mesh from going all the way over,
Oh.
that's Jefferson, yeah.
Yep.
So, but then on the Cass side, there's no kind of enhancement on the east elevation as far as what I'm seeing in the packet. So that's the west toward
Yep.
Jefferson.
So the Cass is actually not a public street.
Oh, so, okay, I don't know that makes a difference to the question I was going to ask, but in terms of the residential, the feedback that you've gotten from the neighbors on the residential sides, the Cass and Logan sides are where those folks live and what they will be looking at. So I was just going to ask you about your
Jefferson and
decision.
Logan, right?
I'm sorry, no, Cass, the east side.
Yep. Yeah, Cass is it's actually not a public street, but it's private property, but the other side of Cass is a school.
My question is related to the treatment of the facade on that side.
Okay.
So I guess ultimately I'm asking, why did you choose not to put any adornment on that side when it's facing the general direction of where the residential is?
Well, our focus was the area where the zoning code required the active use, and in conversations with staff, we were looking at that as the requirement, and we were trying to simulate what the active use space would be in terms of a storefront. And so anywhere where storefront would have been required per the zoning, we supplanted that with the perforated metal, and then we made it a logical break at the column lines. So Cass being not a public street, that's why I'm saying that, is there was no requirement from zoning for that, and so that's why it wasn't really part of it. It's also, it doesn't, well, it is visible, of course, from the residential, but across the street is the school and the school parking lot.
Right, the parking lot.
Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't on my mic. Yeah.
I think that there was some discussion with planning staff about whether those panels should be continued along Logan, whether it should continue towards the east. And I think that there was some conversation with the architects about, you can see how the elevation or the profile is not consistent. And so I think the concern was whether or not it would look a little bit more haphazard
Yes.
along that elevation versus leaving it without those architectural elements, so that maybe it didn't feel so obtrusive visually than if the panels were more haphazard because of the elevation profile of the ramp.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. And the green and orange panels, if you can imagine, on the next column lay over, they actually protruded above the ramp, and so then they were kind of cantilevered, and it just didn't feel right. And so this is where we landed. We had kind of done a couple different studies.
And looking at Jefferson as kind of that primary, Logan being the secondary, and having it wrap the corner like we've historically done for primary. So I'm just giving you a little bit of
I completely
background.
understand. I guess I was just asking in terms of the response to the public feedback that you received.
Got it.
How you
Sure.
handled that. Okay. Okay, then we'll have, if nothing else, we'll have another opportunity to ask questions. So we'll have you sit, and then we will do the public hearing. All right, if you are here from the public and would like to give us your thoughts on this case, feel free to come up the mic, give us your name for the record, and then, as I said, you'll have up to 3 minutes to address the commission. If you're here in the audience, please don't cheer or boo. We want this to be a kind of an inviting environment for people to give their comments. So feel free to come to the mic if you want to share something with us. And yeah, feel free to queue as well, to stand in line.
Questions before my 3 minutes starts. First of all, have you all had a chance to read my memo? If not, I have to put it in front of you.
Oh, you can put it, if it was in our packet, we have had a chance to review it. So.
Okay, I just thought that, and the other thing, we have some comments to the Mary Greenback deck. Can we, that was submitted, could that be put up on the screen? It's in the packet.
All of our stuff is in our packet, so we've had a chance to review it. So yeah, just provide your comments, and that'll all be on the record as well.
Comment to that, that's what I was just, if we want to comment, as part of our comments to what's in your packet.
Just, yeah, include it in your comments. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure I understand.
So I'm Susan Harriman. I'm a resident of Heritage Commons, 20-year resident of the area, 20 years employee of St. Mary's. So I've been in this area. I've witnessed parking from the late 70s as being a challenge. We used to have to pay for parking. This is nothing new. So I think that gives grounds to some of my concerns here. As I said in my memo, there's 4 things. The immediate parking need, I think is overestimated, and I gave you evidence and some defense for that. The long-term parking needs for 2030, hard to say. I don't think we can definitely say that much more traffic is going to come in, especially if we had some alternative support for public transport. There is no evidence of a parking garage, or a bus station, and use for bikes, a protected place for bikes. So I didn't see any alternatives. As is number 2, no other parking options were presented. This came to our attention 1 month ago. It has critical effect. I don't think anybody can say that they would want a 5-story parking garage within a half a block or less than from their house. I'm pretty confident that that is an accurate statement. The plans, the other thing that really feels wrong is this feels so rushed. And the stated time factor and urgency, I call into question, and I implore you to investigate that as well. And then the argument that we don't need any more retail space. I moved in 2005, and the whole corridor of wealthy Jefferson has exploded. So I question that conclusion. The area that has vacancy right now is in an apartment building that there's been new growth since 2005. There is more residential density. There is more opportunity, I think, for ground level use. The problem, the contradiction here is when I asked if you don't do ground level use, or if you have to do ground level use, the response was, we'll just go higher, which is the last thing we would want. Nobody wants the garage, let alone going higher. So it feels like you're screwed. Would you like it front or back? And that's the feeling that we're getting here. Because it's rushed, we don't feel like there's opportunity. There's creative solutions that I think going into the future would be consistent with the whole community plan that the city has put so much time and effort in.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Laura Sessa. I visit this campus often, trying to access medical care, and I just want to note that Trinity Health owns like all of the properties around this site. So like anything regarding like a lack of like retail opportunity is kind of, they did that themselves. But what I really want to talk about is the experience that I had trying to access care at a Trinity Health facility on this campus as someone who did not arrive in a car. I rode my bike that day. And I would describe the layout of the building, the site, as being actively hostile to anyone not in a car. And I'm used to, riding around this city and feeling like, oh, this isn't made for me on a bike. But it's not often that I feel like they really don't want me here and they didn't think of anything to try to mitigate that. There was no secure bike parking. I had to lock my bike in the stairwell of a parking garage, and I was not the only person doing that. There were several bikes locked in stairwells of parking garages, so I had to circle around and find one that was open. The entrance to the building doesn't even face the street. It faces the parking garage. There's a door to the street, and they block it off so that you can't access the building from the street. And so I just really don't agree that just because they have chosen to build this site in such a way that is hostile to anything but private vehicles, that means that they don't have to adhere to requirements in the zoning ordinance for having active uses on a ground level. And as I said, it's clear they haven't even done the basic baseline level of accommodation needed for people who don't arrive in a car. And also I would ask, does a mural on a parking garage really encourage foot traffic? Does it make me safer? No, it doesn't. So it doesn't make, someone like me who is trying to visit this site to access medical care feel like I'm, wanted to even be there. So, yeah, I just wanted to share this anecdote of how the site currently operates, and I think by allowing them to build a parking garage, waiving the requirement for an active use is only going to make the hostile architecture worse. So I would urge you not to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tim Powers. I live in Heritage Commons. I have some documentation that was not in your packet. It was just supplied this morning. It's important you see some images in here.
They did receive that, sir.
From this morning, yes, I printed it, and they all have that letter.
The new pictures are modified from the presentation that was at the open house. Okay. So I'm Tim Powers. I live at 213 Heritage Commons Southeast. I'm a professor of user experience design at Ferris State University in Big Rapids. All right. I've written to the Planning Commission to express my concerns over the proposed parking structure on Logan Street. Since that time, Mary Freebed has hosted a town hall meeting, town hall meeting style forum whose purpose was promoting an opportunity to listen to the public concerns surrounding this project. So new drawings have also been made available showing details of this project. Original concerns from my first communications were, in summary, the construction directly is in opposition of the zoning of this area. Right? The construction would have an adverse effect on the property value of the residences in this area. The construction would detract from the natural settings of the area and displace fauna, natural fauna, and habitats. The construction would obscure sightlines to the downtown area for the residents, would increase traffic on Logan Street, and would add to the blind spot condition at the corner of Jefferson and Logan Street. The increased traffic potential for accidents threatens the safety of the daycare employees and their constituents. The visual barrier this structure creates will encourage the undesired behavior of displaced people, as in loitering, throwing trash, and spending the evening sleeping on the street, which currently happens. And there are safety patrols that are currently in place by Mary Freebed that don't seem to be addressing this issue. Right. While my concerns continue to be in place since that town hall meeting, I have additional concerns now. I was not able to attend that meeting, but the feedback I got from my fellow association members who did attend was that there was not an opportunity to present our concerns to the collective gathering. When Heritage Commons Association members arrived, they were told that the meeting was an open house style as opposed to having a short presentation with time for Q&A, as Mary Freebed had previously communicated to them. Right? The new drawings show an illuminated stairwell tower at the corner of Logan Street and Jefferson Avenue. This will be a source of light pollution for the area. Specifically, this corner abuts many Heritage Common Association residences. Right? The impact on property value is now even greater given this light pollution situation. Right? The zoning of this area was established for a reason, the very reason that issued today. It's meant to protect against the very proposal before the Planning Commission today. If it is rezoned, it means there really was never an integrity to that zoning in the first place. The structure will introduce sound pollution to our neighborhood, and again, contributing to the loss of property value. Car sounds will be amplified by and reverberated off the concrete surfaces and project out through the openings around the sides.
Thank you.
My colleagues will continue my letter. Are you going to read your own? What? You going to read your own?
No, I'm going to read yours.
Okay, so starting with no one from. Thank you.
No one from Mary Free Bed has reached out looking to address our specific concerns. There has been no offer of modification of the plans to respond to our concerns or compensation for loss of property value and quality of life. The request for a waiver of street-level use represents another snubbing of the neighborhood residents. Street-level use could benefit benefit the community if the right resources are placed in them. The lack of initial outreach and input from the community for Mary Free Bed speaks to the sincerity that they have to be a true community partner. It was the Grand Rapids Planning Commission that requested neighborhood residents' input before moving ahead and waiving any zoning restrictions. If Mary Free Bed wants to be a true community partner, they would invite us to the planning discussions, not just notice of what is going to happen. The design of the structure does not add aesthetics value to the area. The residents receive no value from this walling off of our neighborhood, just the opposite. Only Mary Free Bed benefits from this structure. The Heritage Commons community is unique and fragile. This is like building a landfill next to an oasis. The color banners do not create visual value. They are branding. They are a claim of the territorial ownership and power and are akin to heraldry draped from a drab castle. The lateness with which this parking structure development information was delivered continues to befuddle me. Its need must have been evident from the beginning of the hospital planning. Its site investigation for parking capacity had to be a consideration in terms of feasibility of the hospital itself. And I'm going to stop reading this letter for just a moment. I didn't introduce myself. My name is Amanda Brill. And I want to say with this, one of the most disturbing things about this whole situation was that when the walkway was approved initially in 2024, part of that was enabled to give access so that they would not need to build a parking structure. That was part of what was stated at a Planning Commission meeting, was that in approving that, we were letting them have more access to actual parking. So the mission of Mary Free Bed Hospital is to restore hope and freedom through rehabilitation. This mission is supported by core values of working collaboratively and innovatively, being truthful and respectful, and treating patients with both skill and compassion. These core values are not present in this development. What is present is a surprising broad lack of imagination and empathy from a healthcare organization. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anya Van Eldren. I am a resident within 300 feet of the proposed new structure, as well as a Heritage Commons Association Board President. First, I'd like to thank you for tabling this at your last meeting, because, yes, this is very important to me personally and as well as the members of my association. So, and as you can see, many of us attended the open house. We're here at this meeting, sent in letters. There's several who could not be here as well due to their different scheduling conflicts. So we should see in the different letters that were sent in and some of the testimonies that we shared that the neighborhood is not, we're not in favor of allowing the waiver of the active ground use. We really enjoy our neighborhood, the walkability that it has to the different areas in downtown and the surrounding areas. To be honest, I didn't even know what active ground use requirement was before the little green postcard arrived in my mailbox a month or so ago. And as I expressed in my letter, I do not walk regularly between North of Wealthy on Lafayette, from Wealthy to Cherry Street, and I live right on Wealthy. It's a direct way for me to leave my home. And I do that because yeah, there's no ground use. I realize this unconsciously, that there's no ground use. It does not feel welcome because of that, nor do I feel safe in that spaces. And I feel like that is now going to be happening, especially to Logan Street. And it is highly used street currently right now. As was pointed in the slides too, I think you see there's some inconsistencies in the way Mary Free Bed conducted the parking study. They missed some spots that they're creating because of this. Yeah, it is extremely disappointing, as Amanda mentioned. It's documented here in their site special land use proposal. They said that creating the pedestrian walkway would allow for no further need for parking. And now this project is not even finished, and they say they have this need for parking. Yeah, there are several sites in the area that Mary Free Bed is not utilizing. There's an empty tire building. They are appearing to rent out property to ICCF that has parking spaces and a building. So yeah, in short, we are opposed to the active ground use waiver, and we do ask that the Planning Commission continue to work with Mary Free Bed to continue to make modifications to the landscape and the materials, especially on Logan and Cass. There's a park right there. The school allows the neighborhood to use the park. It is full, like evenings, weekends, during the day. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else on this case? Feel free to come up to the mic.
My name is Linda Oakley, and I live in Heritage Hills. I wanted to address an immediate concern with all of this construction. I noticed, I'm a dog walker, so we use the area behind the school, which is, Lafayette, and I guess it's Cass, which is the south side of this drawing here, this drawing. None of the, pedestrian walkways are marked. The city's done a good job at marking everything, but when they redirected the traffic going east on Wealthy around in the back there, and then they would come up Lafayette, they go pretty fast. That school there has lots of little kids, so that if you're in a car, there's no marking for the children. There's one plastic stop sign in the middle of the road on Lafayette where it meets Cass, but those are kind of short-lived, as you can see on Wealthy Street. They get run over and broken a lot. Just even something like marking all of the pedestrian walkways around this area, especially with the construction. And then one more thing I wanted to mention, if we could just find out about these meetings a little bit sooner. I got a note from Heritage Hills about the one that was a week or 2 weeks ago. It was like 45 minutes before the meeting, and I said, I fired back something, it would be nice to have a little more warning. And they said that they just got the information. I don't know who would address that, but if we knew about these meetings, we would be more, I think more people would like to participate. And that's all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If you've already made comment, I'm sorry, you can't comment again. That's.
Can she defer?
No. No. Anyone else on this case? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. Would you like to address some of the comments that were made?
I think that my comments earlier, there's nothing new that I've heard there. If there's specific questions from the commission on comments that were made, I'm happy to address those, but we didn't hear anything from the public that we hadn't already heard.
Any additional questions then?
I guess I have a question about the bike facilities. Is there anything you can do to help address some of those concerns by at least providing some
Yeah.
bike locks and bike racks and those types of things, or?
A couple things. I'd like to point out that the person that came up and spoke did mention multiple times Trinity Health. We are not Trinity Health. This is Mary Free Bed. That's a separate campus that's adjacent to ours. As for bike facilities, The new hospital project is LEED certified, and that LEED certification covers this entire property, which does include the parking deck. And so there are bike parking minimums that we are adhering to and we're exceeding, in addition to showers for staff that choose to use them.
Thank you.
I have a question as well. Did I interpret correctly that if we do not waive the ground floor use, your intention is to put Mary Free Bed offices or administrative support in that ground use?
It probably would not be office, but it would be a Mary Free Bed function. What we've discussed is probably like wheelchair repair and maintenance would be a good use for that function. But essentially, we have to hit our minimums for parking, so it would preclude us from going below grade. We'd have to probably have the total ultimate height increased. And, yeah, the use there, it certainly would not be any sort of retail space like a coffee shop. It's absolutely not in the cards. It would be a Mary Free Bed function.
Thank you.
What thought has been put into mitigating any light pollution from the stairwell and from the parking structure itself?
Yeah, so again, speaking of the lights that would be installed in the structure, it is going to be a precast double T type structure, if you're familiar, so it offers natural coffers to recess the fixtures to prevent light pollution outside. Again, it's a LEED certified project, so there are light pollution requirements that we need to meet for this. We are balancing that. We would like to do some decorative lighting, but we constantly run up into the LEED prohibition on light pollution when we look at our decorative lighting, so it is something we're well aware of.
Is anything being done around motion sensing so that lights can be dimmed when there is no activity?
Well, from an energy standpoint, that's often a good idea. They are all going to be LED lights because that's pretty much all you can buy these days. One of the comments that I did read in the many letters that were submitted is that lights that go on and off are actually more distracting, and so I believe that there's a preference by at least one person that submitted a letter that a consistent light source is less distracting than one that's changing on and off all the time.
And typically with those stairwells, I think the lighting is a fair concern. Laura mentioned really making sure that lights are recessed into a parking deck so that they don't hang below the floor lines, which cause a problem. We'd also be looking at the foot candles of the lighting to ensure that any lighting stayed on the property. Looking at where the light is directed, where the light is directed and making sure it stays on the subject property. Relative to the stairwell, I think it's certainly a fair consideration for our plan reviewer to be looking at what are the minimum foot candles to make sure that the stairwell is illuminated so that it's used and safe. That is the reason for why glass stairwells are required on the exterior of the facade, both a public health supporting public health policies as well as crime prevention policies by making sure that they're illuminated and also so that they are used for safety. So, but again, it's a fair concern and certainly something that the plan reviewer can work with the architect to make sure that the lighting is that minimum necessary versus it being overly bright, which tends to be counter to crime prevention strategies because of light levels and the eyes can't adjust.
This is a question for staff. So we've heard about the LEED requirements, but with the parking deck itself being a by right use, are there requirements for accommodations of other modes of transportation? And talk to us about like the requirements for like pedestrian circulation accommodations and if bike parking is required as part of this.
Sure. Gosh, I wish Rowan was here. So I'd wager to say yes, there is a bike parking requirement with any parking facility generally. I'm not confident in my answer right now. I think Rowan's listening and maybe he could message me, whether the bike parking has to be interior to the structure or it can be exterior. Certainly, oh, look at that. He's already on it. Sorry, 1 second so I can answer that with more specificity here. 30 bike parking spaces are being planned to be placed by the hospital. So yes, bike parking is considered for the use. In this case, it looks like it's going to be exterior to the ramp itself. given that it's not physically connected to the hospital, that probably makes sense. Pedestrian circulation throughout is also part of the plan review. Both the planning department would be looking at that circulation route, as would Mobile GR, to make sure that there's safe pedestrian access throughout the ramp, but also to the either the entrances of the hospital or the public rights of way.
Could you tell us where the bike parking, is it going to be out, is any of it covered or locked or secured?
Yes. Let me switch to a different, so I believe you can see it here. There are some, it's essentially along the Cass, where you see these two orange figures are. It's kind of here and up and about this tree. So I would say the majority of it, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, but that's pretty much
That's Cass and
stretch of it. Yeah,
Wealthy.
it's along Cass. Maybe the site plan showed it
Our
better.
plan reviewer is showing it
Here.
underneath the overhang, closer to the entrance. So go a little bit, I think I have control over here too.
Go for it.
Right in around here.
Yeah, that's a bench right there, but I think it might actually be in two areas. I'm looking at my design team to see.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. And again, the reason why I mentioned the lead is that what we found is that the lead requirement for bike parking exceeded the city requirement, and so that's actually a more stringent standard.
Any other questions go ahead.
Yeah, so can you talk about maybe when you first presented today, you indicated that it was clear from the beginning of the planning of this new children's hospital facility that a parking deck would be required. That's what you said when you were first presented.
I don't believe I said that, sir.
No? Okay, that's what I heard. Anyway, can you talk a little bit about the timing of that and like it was less than a year ago, well, maybe a year or so ago for the pedestrian pathway, which was at the time necessary because of parking connections, and now we're here, and it all felt like last time we were here only a month ago, and it felt there was a lot of anxiety around getting tabled because of the timing. Like it feels very rushed, and then we hear a lot about the rushed notifications for neighborhood engagement and the process of that and things. I'm just kind of curious if you could talk about the timing for that and why the deck discussion now.
Thank you for that question, Commissioner. My name is Ryan Podvin. I serve as the CFO at Mary Free Bed. And I believe the comment that Darren made was that now with our parking demands on campus, the opening of the kids' hospital and the associated staff and patients that will be incremental to the site will require us to open the parking ramp. And so that's not to say that this was a clear need from the beginning of the project. The planning for the project and the initial land use and approval for the kids' hospital, I could estimate that our volumes as for inpatients have increased something like 30 to 40% over the last several years. And our ambulatory peds demand for our pediatric programming of all different kinds has tripled since the beginning of this project. We also see increased demand because the 6th floor shell space, which was originally 20 beds with 8 shelled rooms for adults, was not anticipated to be brought on to service the additional 8 rooms for years to come. And the balance of the 20 additional rooms on that floor were not anticipated to be constructed for like another 5 years. Those 8 rooms are in service today and full of patients, and the 20 beds are under construction, slated to open in February. Quite frankly, the answer to the question is demand for Mary Free Bed is higher than it's ever been, and this kids' hospital is going to draw patients to Grand Rapids from far, to serve our community and from far away as a destination. And there's no way around getting the people and the patients into this building so that they can work without this structure.
Can I get a chance to respond to any of these comments?
Not in the public hearing. You can talk with them afterwards, obviously, if they're willing to do that, but the public hearing is closed. Any other questions for the applicant? And otherwise, we can discuss. Okay, we'll have you sit, obviously, if we have additional questions. we can ask. But, yeah, so as they sit down and we come into our discussion, I just want to remind us all that the parking structure in and of itself is by right. So they could do that, right? So the only things that we are considering today are whether we think it's appropriate to waive the active use on the ground floor and whether the mitigation measures that they've proposed are enough to waive that requirement. So, with that in mind, I'd love to hear from y'all.
So when we initially did this, we tabled because of a lack of engagement with the neighborhood, the materials and the landscaping. Those are the three things. There wasn't a lot of objection to the lack of active use. And it's kind of a 6 and 1/2 dozen another over your benefit or detraction of that, with it being another floor of height in that neighborhood, which nobody seems to want either, right? But that's really the question under the standard of review that we have today, is to evaluate the active use and then determine, was there enough engagement? What do we feel about materials and what about landscaping? Am I correct? That's where we're at.
I would just like to correct that 5 stories is the maximum for that zone district. So
they
the
can't go
idea
up.
that if active use were required, they could go up to the 6th story is not accurate for this zone district.
Okay.
It would be a 5-story maximum. Now, obviously, they could go below grade, understanding that there's water table issues potentially and costs associated with that. But above grade is a cap at 5 stories for that zone district.
And without going below ground, they lose, what did you guys say, 10% of the parking, roughly, was talked about last time? Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Over 10%. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to clarify. That's what we're looking at.
Okay. Well, I do appreciate the additional outreach that was done. Clearly, more folks have been, at least become aware of the project and engaged in some sort of way. I do think that in the future, at least this level of engagement and consideration of the surrounding neighborhood should be done at the beginning of this process. But I do appreciate that part of our tabling reasoning was accomplished, I think. Thoughts on materials?
I guess I'm just sort of, I'm struggling with it a little bit because I feel like it's an improvement over what we saw last time. And I don't know there's a great answer for it, because I think also hearing from other people like ICCF who actually have retail space here and hearing about difficulties trying to fill it, like I don't know that requiring that is going to be the answer here. But I do think that what they have done since we last saw them is at least an improvement, and it's also I appreciate the engagement that has happened, and I just want to make sure that some of the other concerns like the bike parking and the lighting will be addressed, and it seems like that will be able to happen with whatever happens if there is an approval.
So just to be clear, it doesn't have to be retail use when we say active use, especially in the TCC zone district. There is some level of flexibility around whether it's office use, personal service establishment, retail, restaurants. So it is broader than retail. I think that It's a common association when we talk about active uses with retail, and that's understandable because I think in our traditional business areas, there is greater limitation on the types of uses that are considered permitted. So sorry to push back a little bit. I just want to
No,
make
it's a
sure
good distinction. I appreciate that.
we're clear on it.
Yeah, I think, in some ways, I guess I find it a little bit unfortunate that our rules allow for a 5-story parking deck in a zone district directly abutting, medium-density residential, but that's not on the table for us today. I do think there may be better alternatives for a parking deck on the campus and other vacant spaces that the hospital system currently owns, but again, that's not for our discussion today. I think, I'm aware of and keenly aware of many of the vacant spaces in that neighborhood. I don't know that putting some offices in that space is a big enough benefit to say that that needs to happen over what we have in front of us. I think, we are a car-driven society, and whether we like that or not, I think the parking is important. I think it does tend to alleviate some of the stress on the surrounding streets. So I think I can appreciate the changes. I can support the changes here as adequate for me to grant the variance on the ground floor use. I would suggest that we require that to my question earlier, not the specific colors potentially, but the architectural accents be in contrast to the color of the structure itself, so that no matter what color is chosen, it doesn't just sort of blend in and become more of a concrete edifice. So if we were to approve it, I would say that would be a condition I would appreciate adding.
You brought up the Cass side, and I know residents that live on the other side of that parking lot, and, this east elevation is a bit of an eyesore for anybody that's on that street, say Lafayette, looking across the parking lot of the school. Can we ask them?
Yeah, with it not being a public street and part of what would be required for active use, what is our latitude there?
So our building element requirements do typically largely apply to street-facing facades. I think if you did want to require some additional facade articulation, I think you'd have to tie it back to it being necessary as a mitigation measure for the lack of the active use, which is within, the piece of your authority here. So I'd need to think a little bit about that, and maybe you've already thought of that, about how that is a mitigation measure, looking at the entire building and the need for additional facade articulation that would otherwise have been far more evident if there was an active use on that ground floor. So I think it's possible. It would just require some I want to say articulation again, and I've used that word in 2 different ways here. I would just want you to make sure that if you were inclined to require some additional facade treatments, that you articulate the rationale for why it would be required beyond what the ordinance does already have. There is some landscape treatments as well. If you look at the landscape plan along that east elevation, I'm not exactly sure how wide that landscape band is. It looks about 15 to 20 feet, I'm guessing. So there is quite a bit of room, at least at the ground level, for some treatment there with landscaping that I think would help, at least at a pedestrian scale.
Is it possible to say that because they're limited to not doing the entire side of the building that has the angled due to design or architectural, that in lieu of not being able to do that, they extend it around to the other side of the building as an accommodation?
I mean, I think that's reasonable for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Meaning the perforated panels at the ground level or the bands that are currently shown in orange and green?
I think both would be more consistent for the design of the entire structure. All three outward-facing walls that go to the community versus the campus itself.
Would you be open to city staff working with them on some additional design solutions versus the specificity of that treatment? I'm only asking because I'm having a hard time in the moment imagining that break. Can I switch? Oops, there we go. You can see this is the cast facing elevation at the top. The ground floor treatment stops maybe a third on the western side. I'm just wondering how it would look if it picked up again on the east facing elevation. And so I'm just wondering whether that perforated blue treatment would look a little bit odd because it's not all the way along Cass Avenue. And so I think I understand your point, is that there's not enough facade interest on that elevation. Wondering if you would be comfortable with us hearing you and working with the architects to come up with a solution that is complementary of the treatments that are in place for Jefferson and Cass, but perhaps not a replica.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I really don't have much more to add, just to say that I'm in line with the thinking and the thoughts of my fellow commissioners, along with giving the city staff the authority to work with the architects to improve that side of the parking structure.
Okay. I'm hearing quite a bit of, go ahead, please.
I wanted to take a moment to talk about the 5 stories in the transition. Would you like me to do that at all? I realize that that's not completely relevant to your scope of authority today, but I do want to note that from a planning and zoning perspective, the TCC is typically viewed as a reasonable transition from our downtown zone district, which would be further to the north. And so we do see that step down effect taking place, whether it's within the TCC zone district like this is, or maybe a transitional business district, which is a little bit further to the, what would that be, to the west. So these are typically seen as transition zones. We do have transitional features in the ordinance. In this particular case, because it's not directly abutting a residential district, meaning the TCC isn't sharing a lot line with the residential zone district, those transitional features that would have required a step back of the building is not in place, meaning that the street itself is serving as a physical separation or transition between those zone districts. Also, understanding that the profile of the homes in Heritage Commons are a little bit lower. I believe they're about 1.5 stories or single story. Yeah. They're all 2 stories? Okay, sorry. But they are a lower profile structure compared to some of the buildings I'm thinking as we move further into Heritage Hill to the east. My point being is that it is in the MDR zone district, the mixed density residential, which actually allows 3 stories by right and 4 stories with planning commission. And so from a planning and zoning perspective, having those 2 zone districts next to each other is not, on paper at least, as abrupt as I think what has been expressed because of the profile of the existing homes being 2 stories, lower profile, at least I think they are relative to some other traditional structures in the city, and then having a new 5-story structure across the street. So I just wanted to explain at least the planning rationale for why those decisions are in the plans and in the code, even though I realize that it may not be of comfort to the residents that are across the street. That's just speaking to the planning and zoning for those two abutting zone districts and the lack of a more direct transitional feature like a step back in the zoning ordinance.
Thanks for that. Okay, I'm hearing some kind of relative consensus here. I guess the only additional thing I would say, and it's not just for this applicant, but other applicants that, especially of this level of large kind of institutional status in our city, is just to urge all of you to have some more creative thinking about mobility in general when we're looking at future development and the future of our city and how people want to get around and not just maybe kind of the status quo of how we are. So I do encourage you to incorporate that into your short and long range planning moving forward. With that, it is up to someone else to make a motion.
I can make a motion. I would ask that Director Turkelson consider some language around the request for contrasting colors to the mesh screen and the enhancement of the Cass Avenue facade as I do so. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use and site plan review request of Mary Free Bed Rehabilitation Hospital to waive the ground floor active use requirement for a new parking structure at 220 Wealthy Street Southeast for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of our master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will support the 2024 Community Master Plan objective to coordinate land use and transportation decisions by limiting the impact of surface parking, and support the purpose and intent of the TNTCC zone district to maintain a compact, transit-friendly, walkable, mixed-use environment by provision of parking for the entire Mary Free Bed campus. 2, that the proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of section 5.12.08E because the parking and loading areas are provided with particular attention to the effect of noise, glare, and odor on adjacent properties in the proposed development, and all elements of the site design are harmoniously and efficiently organized in relation to the size and type of lot, character of the neighborhood and adjoining property, and the type and size and proportion of the buildings. 3A, the proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood and adjacent properties and the natural environment because the parking structure provides necessary off-street parking located at the rear of the active use of the property, and design and landscape elements have been incorporated into the structure to mitigate the lack of ground floor active use. 3B, potentially adverse effects arising from the proposed use will be minimized because the parking structure will provide much-needed parking for the Mary Free Bed campus as supported by the parking demand study completed in July of 2025. The main vehicular entrance to the parking structure will be from the internal drive off Jefferson Ave, and safe and efficient pedestrian connections will be provided. The proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare because excessive noise, glare, odor, or visual clutter are not anticipated, and the proposed building setback, landscaping, and screening elements will mitigate potential disturbances. 3D, the proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment because the parking structure's site placement, materials, and architectural design of the parking structure and landscaping work together to reinforce the urban street wall, and incorporation of a mural will provide visual interest. 5A, the proposed use will safeguard the health. Am I skipping that? I am skipping that one, sorry. New 5A, the proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability or economic welfare of the city because the proposed use will support the established parking needs of a valued health provider providing jobs and bringing visitors to the city. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard conditions set A approvals. 1, that the application and plans submitted by the applicant, signed, dated, and stamped by the planning director shall constitute the approved plans, except if plan elements do not meet ordinance requirements and or as amended in this resolution. 2, that the use shall operate according to the application and per testimony as recorded in the Planning Commission minutes. 3, that this approval does not include any proposed signs or any future signs. and any future signs shall be subject to the requirements of Article 15 of the ordinance and permits received prior to installation. 4, that a land use development services, LUDS permit, building permit, and all other required permits be obtained from the City of Grand Rapids prior to construction, demolition, or operation. 5, that any expansion of the approved special land use requires an additional special land use review and approval by the Planning Commission. 6, that the proposed use will comply with all other applicable city ordinances and policies and all state laws. 7, that this approval shall take effect 16 calendar days after the date of the Planning Commission's decision. 2, that this approval includes a waiver of the minimum transparency required for the structure, provided the storefront windows are incorporated into the stair towers as shown on the plans. 3, that the lights interior to the parking structure and stairwells shall be recessed and strategically placed to prevent unnecessary light pollution to nearby residential uses. 4, that the access drive on Logan Street shall be the minimum width necessary to facilitate egress of maintenance vehicles and meet traffic safety requirements. And 5,
That the applicant work with staff on additional architectural treatments on the east elevation that are aesthetically consistent with the other approved architectural mitigation treatments. And that the color of the ventilated mesh panel treatments on the upper elevations of the parking deck be a color that contrasts with the parking deck.
Yep, that works.
Support.
Okay, I have a motion support. Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Thanks, y'all. I was the only nay. Yeah. Okay.
Hang on. We don't have a
I
quorum.
opposed, but everybody else.
She opposed?
She did, yeah.
But everybody else, but it carried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Majority,
Yeah.
majority, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Still have a quorum, and that was a
Yeah.
majority, yep,
Yeah.
yep.
I went into busy
Yeah.
mode and
Nope.
of those board memberships.
Majority of the quorum voted in favor, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. We are going to move on to our next case. Welcome back, Commissioner Swem. And we're looking at 1630 Griggs.
The next item on the agenda is a request from Grand Rapids Christian Schools. They are asking for some site changes associated with the expansion of new preschool programming on the campus. The site is located in the MCN LDR Zone District. It has frontage on Sylvan Avenue, Griggs Street, Rosewood Avenue, and a little bit on Burton. Okay. Here you can, on this aerial photo, you can see the school improvements. The area in question of the new preschool programming is where I'm pointing right now in the portion of the building along Rosewood. So the site will remain educational in use, but because the intended structural changes and associated site alterations will change the way the site functions and may potentially have impacts on surrounding property owners, the changes are being reviewed under site plan review with a public hearing. The site is about 13 acres in size. The site includes a number of Grand Rapids Christian School programming, including an early learning center, an elementary school, and there are a few preschool classrooms, I understand, within the elementary school. And then Sylvan Head Start is located in the portion of the building fronting Rosewood. That has been utilized by Head Start since about 2015. And back in 2016, Grand Rapids Christian came to the Planning Commission for approval for some site changes at that time as well. This parking lot on the south was expanded. Bus parking was allowed here as well. I have a couple of Google Street View images to show you. The area occupied by the Sylvan Head Start on Rosewood is shown in this image. You can see that it ends in a cul-de-sac, and then Rosewood ends in a cul-de-sac, but there is an access to a parking lot at the end of the cul-de-sac. This image shows the ingress and egress as well as parking on the Sylvan side of the building. There's also some bus parking there, and you can also get a peek at what is called the central parking lot. So right now there's 106 parking spaces and pickup and drop-off spaces on site. The changes will result in 153 parking spaces, and that is within the maximum allowed for this use. In association with these changes, the applicant has had hired a traffic consultant who did trip generation analysis and queue analysis. And through that, the proposal was analyzed and generally and found to be adequate. It was also reviewed by our mobile GR department, who concurs with the findings. We do want to emphasize, however, that that does need to be the parking and queuing that's proposed does need to be done in association with strong communications to parents of the students. Grand Rapids Christian has done neighborhood engagement. They had a meeting with neighbors on October 22nd. There were 10 attendees from 9 addresses, and they included meeting notes in the application, in the packet. We've also received some letters in support and in opposition to this proposal. The proposed changes to address parking and pickup and drop-off were supported by letters submitted by 4 individuals. We also did include a letter of opposition signed by 38 individuals who oppose the campus drive and parking expansion. They generally cite impacts on students' health and safety and impacts on the environment. So I did a very brief overview because Grand Rapids Christian will be able to explain this much better than I will. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, but I'm really deferring explanation to them.
Great, thanks, Elizabeth. Any initial questions for Elizabeth? Okay, then we'll have y'all come up and tell us more.
So you feel free to advance as you wish, and I also have a clicker, so I can.
Okay, when we go there to start.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. Well, good afternoon. My name is Aaron Winkle, and I have the privilege of serving as the superintendent of Grand Rapids Christian Schools. Thanks to each of you for your time today and for the chance to come before you to tell you a little bit more about the project. I want to let my colleague from AMDG introduce himself.
Todd Palmer, architect with AMDG Architects, so representing the design team. We also have our civil engineer, Jeff Benlar from Excel as well.
Great, thanks. And I also want to acknowledge our 2 assistant superintendents, Jim Primus and Nick DeCosta, are here as well on behalf of Grand Rapids Christian Schools. I just want to begin by a few opening comments to help frame this project and significance for Grand Rapids Christian Schools. In November of 2023, my predecessor, Tom DeYoung, initiated a master site planning process for Grand Rapids Christian Schools. It was an attempt to position the district. We have 5 campuses, 2,400 students, approximately 1,500 families, to position the district for long-term health so we could continue to serve our families well today and also long into the future. Through that process, what we learned was that in order to do that well, we needed to align our enrollment across the entire district, not looking at single campuses. Also taking that into account was awareness of a broader trend in our city and across the country for increased opportunities for early childhood and for preschool programs across our city. When we looked at our campuses collectively, including the 4 campuses we have in the city, we recognized an opportunity to shift some of the grades across our 3 campuses at the middle school, our Iroquois campus, and the Evergreen campus that would allow for increased capacity at preschool, which would move preschool from our Iroquois campus located here in the drawing to the Evergreen campus. That would allow space at our Iroquois campus to become a K-5 building, and our middle school that is currently beyond capacity to become, instead of being a 5, 6, 7, and 8 building, that'd become 6, 7, and 8, and that would solve our space issues there. So that's the work that we have been doing over the last couple of years that has led us to this particular project where we would be making these improvements at the Evergreen campus. The goal for us has really been to optimize enrollment. We want to continue to serve families and students across our city. To do that, we need to have alignment across all of our campuses. We need to have a financial model that continues to work if we're going to serve them well. I do have an additional letter here that we received late. I don't know what's the best way to enter that into the record, but we can just pass it around here. It'd be great. Similar in content and themes from other letters that you have already received. Before I have Todd come forward, I want to just acknowledge we've had good engagement with neighbors. We recognize that we have neighbors who have had concerns about the project. In addition to the meeting that Elizabeth mentioned in October, we had a follow-up meeting when we heard that there were neighbors, particularly on the Sylvan side, who had concerns. There was a couple of neighbors who were willing to help coordinate, and so I attended a meeting on a Sunday evening. We looked at the project outside together. They invited me into their home to listen to the concerns, to try to answer questions I found through the project. When we've been able to provide accurate information, that's been helpful for neighbors who have had questions, rightfully were aware that they had questions. I think the other thing I just want to mention is we've been in this neighborhood for a long, long time. Many of the neighbors who have reached out, both to express support and concern, many of them have lived there for decades. And one of the portraits of a graduate that we have is to be thoughtful neighbors. And so we have tried to model that in the ways that we've entered this process by being thoughtful neighbors, listening to the feedback, while at the same time recognizing at times there are competing interests in terms of what people would prefer in this project. And so we've gone through many iterations with the help of AMDG and their team to come up with a project that attempts to take into the concerns and at the same time meets the goals that it has for Grand Rapids Christian Schools. So thanks for your time. I want to invite Todd to come forward and tell you a little bit more about the project.
Yeah, so jumping into the design, walking you through that, initially just focusing on the building. So we are, as Elizabeth mentioned, we are staying within the footprint of that existing building. We aren't expanding beyond the existing walls, primarily renovating classrooms to modernize those classrooms and design those specifically to, be built for early childhood learning environments. Beyond the interior renovations, we are looking to add additional entry canopies to cover and identify those entries into the building, creating a cohesive architecture for the campus that was instituted when the Early Learning Center had put an entry canopy at that entry of that program. For the site work that we've developed with our team and with working with Grand Rapids Christian, there was 2 key principles that drove our work, enhancing campus safety, and then as Aaron mentioned, being a thoughtful neighbor. So the first strategy that we implemented was that campus drive, that one-way campus drive through the campus, with really the intent to alleviate current congestion on Rosewood. That is a result of the school with Sylvan, but then in addition to also accommodate some increased traffic that we anticipate with the Grix preschool program. The school is going to be working closely with the city as we've reviewed this with the engineers to update the parking signage on Rosewood, which currently has no parking time restrictions on the east side. We'd be shifting that to the west side of Rosewood. I think to ensure effective traffic management for the site, we are incorporating gates at both the entry and the exit of that campus drive, just so that Grand Rapids Christian has the ability to close that down during designated time. So it's not intended to be a thoroughfare through the campus. By no means does Grand Rapids Christian want to have vehicle traffic integrating with children, just from a safety standpoint, as well as just the crossover of the traffic. So as Elizabeth mentioned, we did engage with Progressive AE traffic engineers to develop the queuing analysis, and what this drive ultimately does is allow this traffic at pickup and drop-off to be more predictable, run more efficiently and smoother, and ultimately enhance the safety for the students, parents, and faculty, and ultimately the neighbors as well. So, and then just quickly, the second strategy that we implemented was adding a secondary entrance to the preschool during drop-off and pickup. So off that central campus drive on the west side of the building, we've indicated a second entrance. So now, instead of having the single entrance, which is kind of the bottleneck for the current situation, we've now placed a second entrance, which will allow the traffic as well as the parents to kind of spread out. So additionally, the central parking lot, we will be expanding or looking to expand the central parking lot. As we reviewed the site, the current site is under the required number of parking per the ordinance. Again, we are over the required parking, but as we balanced the need versus visitor, temporary parking spots, that 153 does include the 18 on the temporary campus drive. So a lot of these won't be available for, staff. And so as we looked and reviewed for the need for faculty, that's why we feel we right-size that central parking lot. I think if you have any further questions around the site design relative to how the, impervious area is being handled, but we are anticipating the stormwater management strategy will be designed to meet the city standards. We are incorporating natural landscaping features as well as natural landscaping playgrounds. So if you're familiar with this site, there's a beautiful playground on the corner of Rosewood and Griggs that we intend to kind of use as inspiration for some additional play areas within the campus. I think with that, we'll open it up with any questions that the Planning Commission has. Thanks.
Great. Any questions? Go ahead.
So the drawing shows arrows going out of the exit at Sylvan, and you reference a one-way road.
Correct.
Currently, that central lot is a two-way entrance in and out, right? Your arrows on the northern, or whatever, the portion facing Sylvan seem to have bidirectional arrows. So is it not all one way? They're still going to be able to come in and park in that central lot?
Yeah, the existing drive off of Sylvan is a two-way entrance exit at this point.
So the arrows are just misleading. All right.
So the one-way campus drive does end at that central parking lot. So that's where it does become a two-way.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And with the gate closures, do you anticipate closing them every day during school hours, or what is kind of the regular? Yes, I'm seeing nods. Okay, great.
The plan would be that as soon as morning drop-off is completed around 8:45, 9 a.m., they would go closed.
Okay.
And then they would be reopened again late in the or at the end of the school day for people to come back through them, so that they would not be open during times when students would be coming to use the playground.
Gotcha.
The primary priority.
But then that central lot would still be available for people that need to come in
and
and
go.
out? Yeah,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
I apologize. Would it also be closed like after hours, like weekends and stuff that would not be publicly accessed?
Correct.
Okay. I have a question potentially for both applicant and staff. There's a note in our in the packet around 9 years ago when they came forward around the Head Start program that the city, a condition of approval was that there's a right turn only off of Burton. And I wondered if there's context for that from the staff, and then I wonder from the applicant if that were different, if that would change the plans, or if that would, modify what you, obviously wouldn't change this, would that change the idea of how you handle this in general?
We still anticipate looking at utilizing that easement that's been established currently that uses IHMs, but there's no light at that. And so as someone that's navigated Burton Street in the morning, I think, trying to take even if it did have a left-hand turn lane, just the danger and back up in the queuing that would happen into the south parking lot would be a really big concern. So we do anticipate that we would be able to leverage that easement for a right turn only option for parents that would be going through the south parking lot. But then the campus drive would be utilized for those who need to go to Sylvan to take a left at the Burton Street of the intersection of Sylvan and Burton.
I assume the IHM folks are also not allowed to turn left out of there?
No, I don't.
Okay. I don't know from staff, it just feels weird because that street, I don't recall the name of that street, directly across the street there from Ottawa, also experiences a ton of traffic in the mornings, and they're allowed to turn left and right out of there, no problems. And I've done it a number of times. It's a little bit of a challenge, but I just am curious about that.
I think it's because of also the loading and unloading in the buses utilizing that area. And so if there was a backup trying to turn left onto Burton out of the site, then the queuing backs up through Rosewood. And because they were, at the time, there was so much bottleneck and limitations as to where, like, the circulation system was not nearly as robust as what they're planning now. And so the idea, I think, was to keep traffic moving through that south parking lot because of the buses and the drop-off, and there not being a whole lot of other space to do that. We didn't want to have that backup happen.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant at this time? No? Okay, then I will open up the public hearing. If you are here about this case and would like to share your thoughts with us, please come up to the mic, introduce yourself, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
My name is David Van Zybeld, and I live at 1836 Sylvan. I'm one of those houses that backs up to the school. Well, first of all, I was not at the October meeting, my wife was, and she took a screenshot of the community impact slide that they had shown us. And I'm going to talk about some of the bulletin points that they mentioned. First, safety-driven design. The new one-way interior drive and multiple drop-off locations improve circulation and significantly reduce neighborhood traffic congestion during peak hours. This is wishful thinking at best. I think a better solution is left and right onto Burton. I think that would be brilliant. And that would also, if I may direct your attention over here, if there were another entrance here rather than here.
I'm sorry, sir, it's not going to be picked up on our, if you,
Got it. So there could be, if there were additional parking on Rosewood for dropping off, then that would allow more space for people to enter the school, dropping off their children, and then proceeding out to Burton Street. And that way we wouldn't need the use of a drive through there. One slide that was kind of amusing to our family was a more sustainable campus was a bullet point that was on the slide. And Aaron was kind of surprised about that. Like, my slide doesn't say that, so there was a change that was made in our PowerPoint, but it said a more sustainable campus. that the project would add impervious area, but they're going to invest in new trees and native plantings to enhance the beauty and manage stormwaters. But that would, that would not be adequate to offset or neutralize the 50,000 square feet of new asphalt. And a misleading statement about nature-based play and learning. It says that it adds 17,500 square feet of nature-based play space, but that's actually, much of it is just replacing what's being taken away in their site plan. And not to mention the loss of free access to the field, which is now being moved farther away from the campus as well. That's being pushed farther to the south. Finally, the parking exceeds the city minimum parking requirement by more than 20 spaces. And every single person that was in our house for that meeting with the superintendent said that they would be totally fine with people parking on Sylvan. There's a ton of parking right there, and there's no need for 20 additional spaces in the interior of the campus, in addition to the drive, adding all that traffic and concrete. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Van Zeitveld, and I live in one of those 17 houses on Sylvan that share the city block with Evergreen School. After talking with neighbors and school administrators and fact-checking, here is a list of the ways in which I do find that the adjacent properties will be affected by this proposal. First, additional traffic. We have always had school traffic on the street in front of our homes, but now there will also be traffic through the length of the field behind our homes. Second, worse air quality. The traffic on the new drive introduces vehicle emissions into a previously green area. Third, hotter temperatures. 50,000 square feet of new blacktop and concrete will be heating up our yards and homes. Fourth, unhealthy amounts of artificial lighting. The homes backing up to the school field include organic vegetable growers and successful beekeepers. This jar of honey was produced on Sylvan Avenue by two young beekeepers who walk to attend school at Mulick Park Elementary. Bees and other pollinators depend on a dark night. Just because we are conveniently located between the larger flagship campuses of the Grand Rapids Christian Schools doesn't make it permissible to turn our neighborhood into a drive-through. I am asking the Planning Commission to turn down this proposal. We would like to see a plan that is less car-centric and more child-centric. A plan that is in tandem with the climate action and adaptivity, I don't remember the name of it, the CAAP, that was adapted by the city just this August. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Barb Denning. I also live on Sylvan Avenue and have lived there close to 30 years now. Currently, 6 small school buses, some of which are electric, I believe, drop off children in this area that I'm circling with the cursor there. that busing will be eliminated as Head Start moves away from this location. So although the number of students will remain the same, the number of cars is going to increase as they are not providing transportation to the youngest of their students due to regulations that are different from transporting the older students. As we all know, car exhaust is not healthy for us, but I would like to draw your attention to an article published in the New York Times on November 1st. It was citing a study by the University of Pennsylvania with a direct link between particulate matter from car exhaust to causing Alzheimer's disease. With this plan, bringing the cars into the campus, we're going to be bringing in exhaust, obviously. These are developing minds at their most vulnerable time. And I just would urge you to consider asking them to come up with a plan that does not concentrate the exhaust. There seems to be room here on the west, and as well as on the east, there's room for like an arch or a cutway for drop-off. They do have doors over here that they could access and have the children walk inside the building if they needed to. The new parking is going to be in a low area of the site where prevailing winds from the southwest will pick up that exhaust and blow it right into their building. I'm not of a profession with expertise in how the particulate matter will go up or down, but it would seem to be common sense not to put it right in this area where the children are going to be breathing it in. Not that we really want to breathe it in anymore, but I'm thinking by dispersing these cars more, that would be a healthier idea. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, anyone else on this case? Okay, I will close the public hearing. Do y'all want to respond to any of the comments?
I guess, is there any questions from the Planning Commission related to any of the comments from?
I guess I'm wondering about the lighting situation. What is going to be added as a result of this project?
We are adding parking lights along the drive as well as within the central lot to maintain security and safety. And then, those would be on like a lighting control system as well that could be timed to turn off, during especially on the drive not being used. And then the central lot, could be dimmed at certain times as well, once the faculty has gone home. So that's still to be determined, but definitely some systems in place that could allow for that control.
Thank you. And then, Kristen, can you remind, there are requirements in terms of like what?
Correct, yep.
Yep, there are, the fixtures must be full cutoff so that the light has to go straight down. And then there are restrictions on the number of foot candles that can exist. So all of that would be reviewed during plan review. At the lot line, it has to be at 0. So light cannot go from their property onto the neighboring properties. There are requirements in the ordinance that do require lighting levels to be reduced by 50% after the close of business. So whether they are dimmed or turned off, 50% of them being turned off. So there are some options. Of course, the Planning Commission, as a condition of approval, could require that they be all turned off. That does not include the lighting on above the doors of the building. I just specifically mean the parking lot and the path, the drive lighting. So there are some options if the Planning Commission feels that the ordinance requirement of that 50% reduction isn't sufficient.
There were some concerns brought up about the amount of concrete or asphalt that will be added to the area, but as far as stormwater retention and that type of thing, I think there are also detention basins here in the plan. So I wondered if you could talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, good afternoon. Jeff Van Laar with Excel Engineering, civil engineer. So we are planning 2 detention basins on this project. One just to the south of the central lot, and then another near the south end of the property. The reason there's 2 is just based on topography and where we have stormwater connections for releasing that water. And so what we're doing, we're following city requirements for stormwater to capture and release or retain the water from the new impervious area. And so our calculations and our sizing are based on the city requirements.
Thank you.
One further question for the engineer. The one-way drive is wider than some two-way streets. Is there a reason that the width is set the way it is, whereas a one-way parking aisle could easily be 12 to 15 feet? Why is this 28?
So the reason for the width is to allow for emergency vehicle access around parked cars during drop-off. So there will be queuing and drop-off along the sidewalk, but we're leaving a full 20 feet in addition to that, which is the requirement for an emergency drive.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So on the right-hand side of that drive, if I'm driving down there, I may pull my car off to the side and park it into temporary and get out. Okay, yep. Okay. I didn't recognize that at first. Thank you.
So the interior renovation of the school is requiring you to have a fire access road around the entire thing now? Is that what you're saying, by the requirement for the 20 feet?
Yeah, I believe typical requirements are that fire has access all the way around the building, which they currently don't. And so with the renovation, I think that would trigger that code.
So we know this is being required, or we just say we're making it that wide because it might be?
Yeah, I mean, we can, further review the width of that drive with the city engineers to right size it. If we're not required.
Because I'm going to get a little nerdy here, but it's not really a change of use, right?
No, it's a preschool use.
We're not adding on to it.
Correct.
So the likelihood that this work would require a fire access road is probably pretty slim. I could be wrong, but
yeah,
so
and then
I'm just trying to clarify that.
Yeah, obviously
there's a difference between a 20-foot road width requirement because it's needed, and over here a 20-foot road width requirement exists, and we're just applying it here because.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's less cost, less impervious area to reduce the width of the drive. It's something that we still need to confirm relative to the fire access requirements, so.
Yeah, if Planning Commission would prefer, we could craft a condition that it be the minimum necessary per the fire department requirements and traffic safety. I think that there was some desire for maybe some slip lanes, just in case things get a little bit backed up, but I wondered the same thing, whether it was actually necessary or convenient. And also, I think that if the goal is to improve safety, having 20-foot lanes can be counter to that, because people can go a lot faster with 20-foot lanes than what they would typically do in, 12-foot sections, for example. So we can confirm that. I'm not sure I'm prepared to confirm what the fire department did or didn't require on this particular site. So if you'd like, I can work on something to that effect.
Thank you. I think similarly, I'm curious about the choice to go from parallel parking, pick up and drop off along Rosewood and then along the first section of the drive, and then switch to a 45-degree parking arrangement.
I think it was just to accommodate some additional capacity within that within that drive.
Okay, and there's no concerns about people backing, like the issues with cars actually traveling around and then people having to back up into that traffic? It seems complicated in my head, but you've thought about this a lot more than I have, so I just wanted to ask the question.
This is related to your question. When we did the master site planning work and began to identify this 3-campus solution, moving preschool to this site, we identified that as the best option quite quickly. Then we went through about 7 different iterations, thinking about impact of neighbors, impact of neighboring streets, Griggs, Rosewood, Sylvan, the potential right turn onto Burton. And so this is, I would guess, maybe the 7th iteration. And one of the factors in this latest, what we proposed to you, is we now have 2 entry points. You can see them, one on the east side of the building and then number 2 on the west side. Those angled spots are in part to try to get as many parking spaces as close to where families are going to be bringing their kids in and out of the building as possible. And so to have those at a 45-degree angle does bring to a little bit tighter density there, getting them closer to the door. If you have dropped off your own children, you know somebody who has, it often includes carrying a car seat while you're holding a 2-year-old or 3-year-old or 4-year-old in your hand. And so we were trying to be sensitive to what that looks like for parents or grandparents in the morning, bringing their kids, knowing that on a rainy day with snow falling, having more parking spaces closer to those entry points would positively impact the experience of those of our families who are participating. And at the same time, reduce the amount of queuing going back onto Rosewood, which is where we've received the most concern from neighbors, where traffic is currently a major issue. If we don't have those spots close by, what ends up happening is people park in the place that's most convenient for them, which has, we've heard from a number of neighbors on Rosewood where their driveways have been parked in and someone says, I'll be back in just a minute. Some of you maybe, if you live near a school, you've seen these things. And so we were trying to be sensitive to that. And that included getting more spots closer to access points on both the east side and the west side in ways that we thought would both be best for our families and be the most respectful to the neighbors who are currently being negatively impacted by that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, discussion here. Mm-hmm. All right, folks.
I hear the concerns about the, particulate matter and those types of things. I'm not an expert on it, but it seems like that particulate matter is going to happen somewhere in this block because cars are going to be dropping students off and stopping. I'm not sure how to mitigate that. I think that we can handle the light mitigation through conditioning and through city staff approval. And it looks like the water and runoff is also being addressed. And then if we can reduce any of the impervious surface by reducing the size of that driveway, I think that would be helpful as well.
Would that reduction also apply to the 24-foot drive aisles in the central lot? That seems unnecessarily wide as well.
Yeah, if there's room to do that.
22
I'm
feet
not a
is
traffic expert, and I don't know how wide they would have to be, but like if they can work with staff to reduce any of that size,
Our ordinance is 22 feet.
Oh, okay.
So it's 24 feet is wider than what we would require. Sometimes it is helpful depending on the population that is being served, but it's also another way of slowing vehicles down as they move through these lots, which seems pretty imperative given the nature of the use.
Yeah, and I think too, with some of the arrow directions that we're showing, we could look at reducing it even further with a one-way only in that parallel parking lot, so we could get less than the 22 probably.
Probably not if you have perpendicular
Okay.
parking. If you had angled parking, then you could reduce those drive lanes further. But otherwise, those
22,
dimensions
okay.
won't work for you. So it depends, and if you have angled parking, you'll typically lose parking spaces. So I'm not sure that that's a trade-off that
You looked at that.
is necessary, but
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Other thoughts? Yeah, I agree with the confidence in staff to work with the applicant to right-size those drive aisles and make sure that the lighting is, that there isn't addition of light pollution in the neighborhood. I also appreciate that the drive will be closed during school hours and other times when it's not actively in use to further enhance the safety and prevent emissions directly on the site as well. And yeah.
I'm not sure if the gates, I'm probably bringing up issues of my past enforcement life, but would the Planning Commission be open to a clearly stated condition if that's the expectation that those gates be closed in the resolution? Sometimes, 15 years, 20 years from now, future Kristens, future school administrators maybe have a different interpretation of how the minutes reflect any sort of critical element towards your decision-making. So if that is something that's important to the entire commission, I might request that that be a condition of approval, since it's clear that that's what's being offered, and any sort of future approval presumably would be based on that expectation. Does that make sense?
Thoughts on that?
Sure, you look a little uncertain.
Well, I just like wondering what if this like becomes a different use of like a high school later on, and they want to have the traffic open all day. Like, I don't know.
Well, it's still an institutional educational use.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right. I'm just saying if it's a critical piece of decision-making for the Planning Commission, having it as a condition is sometimes beneficial for any sort of future enforcement, should that be necessary.
So I feel like I understand the importance of closing that off for school operations. I'm curious if there's actually a planning perspective where we care that much.
That's fair.
So if you have any thoughts about that, I would love to hear them, but I'm struggling with whether or not that being open matters from a planning perspective.
I guess my concern would be having them open like on the weekends and having people trying to cut through there for some reason. I don't know if there's a benefit for neighbors to cut through the school property, but I wouldn't want them to be doing that.
What will happen for sporting events? Well, you'll open them? Will you have sporting events? Okay. So that would just be the use of the intended use of the school. Okay, understood.
I would be fine with conditioning it to be closed, just personally, when school's activities are not happening.
I think the safety benefits are there in terms of the reduction or elimination of the conflict between students and vehicles. I think that is a potentially justifiable reason to add that condition. But yeah, I don't think any of us want to hamper the potential operations of what's going on here.
Yeah, it could just be a school determination of whether that's what's in their best interest for the safety of their children. I meant more if it's an issue of cut through and impact to the adjacent neighbors, that's where some sort of condition might be beneficial for us. So I don't know if again, I don't know that the school wouldn't make the same choice for the protection and safety of their children. I was thinking more external focused.
Yeah, I don't think it's critical for me. I think when I was thinking about it, when I asked the question, is I think the reality is this and all school grounds tend to feel as though they're public parks, right? And I wouldn't necessarily want people driving through there on a Saturday afternoons or Sundays as they're doing pickup soccer games and things and parking back there. But I honestly, I think about that from the school perspective. I don't know that the school would want that either. So I'm comfortable. I would be fine with or without a condition around that.
Yeah, the condition doesn't matter to me either. I'm fine with it either way. And I think overall the proposal, while typically not a huge fan of adding parking for any reason, I think we hear all the time about queuing problems, especially for preschools. This site's really interesting compared to a recent application because there's a lot of similarities. Even grading on site is really similar. But it's really neither here nor there, other than the fact that whole community would have loved to see something like this. So that is interesting. I think a lot of thought's gone into it. I think a little more thought into the drive width. I'm not convinced that it needs to be a fire lane. If it needs to be, so be it. I'd prefer to see the angled spaces as parallel spaces, but it's not a hill I'm willing to die on, so I think it's fine the way it is.
I have a question for staff. In our draft resolution, we have a condition that speaks about a landscape buffer for the homes along Sylvan, and I'm just wondering, I didn't see that as an indicated issue in any of the letters we received, didn't hear it in public testimony, and I'm just curious where that's coming from. And that drive, as those headlights face west, is probably 20 vertical feet above those homes. So I'm just not certain what that would accomplish.
Ooh, just got a shock. Not all the properties on Sylvan have fences, and we just wanted to be sure that none of these folks were affected by the internal traffic, by the headlights.
And this is I see that note now on this plan I missed. This is the plan from the schools, yeah, from the applicant?
This is from the applicant, yes.
They've indicated that that's the intention anyway? Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. So they originally had like a buffer in this area by the central parking lot, and then we discussed, there might be a need over here. So we felt that that's something that could be worked out later.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions or discussion?
Just to note that we did notice after the resolution was created that there is a dumpster that's not screened. So if the Planning Commission's open, we would also recommend adding a requirement that any dumpsters be appropriately screened per the ordinance. So I think one might have been added after the fact.
Great,
I can make a motion.
fantastic.
All right. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the request of Grand Rapids Christian Schools, Aaron Winkle, for site plan review for site changes associated with the expansion of preschool programming at 1630 Griggs Street Southeast, 1875 Rosewood Avenue Southeast, to include expanded parking facilities and a new campus drive intended to facilitate student drop-off and pickup for the following reasons. 1, the proposed use will meet the purpose and the intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed changes will reinforce and support the desired character for this educational use, site design, and building elements. And the proposed changes will allow more vehicles for future drop-off and pickup to be accommodated on-site rather than on surrounding neighborhood streets. 2A, the site is designed to comply with all provisions of the zoning ordinance because natural features, including landscaping, will be incorporated into the site design to the maximum extent practicable, and the proposed improvements have been designed to lessen impacts to the surrounding neighborhood, and waivers are not requested. 2B, the proposed site will be developed so as not to impede the normal and orderly development or improvement of surrounding areas for uses permitted by this chapter because the proposed changes are internal to the site, and the proposed changes will lessen the traffic and congestion along nearby residential streets. 2E, all elements of the site design are harmoniously and efficiently organized in relation to topography, the size and type of the lot, character of the neighborhood and adjoining property, and the type, size, and proportions of buildings because the site design incorporates detention ponds and landscaping features to manage stormwater runoff from new impervious surfaces on site. The new internal drive and parking areas are designed around existing grade changes on the property. 2G, outdoor lighting is designed to be deflected away from adjacent properties, not to impede the vision of drivers on public streets, adversely affect abutting properties, or unnecessarily affect the natural evening sky. 3A, the site landscape features such as natural vegetation and steep slopes will be preserved in their natural state insofar as practicable because the site changes will minimize tree and soil removal, alteration to natural drainage courses, and the amount of cutting, filling, and grading. 3B, natural features and site topography are incorporated into the proposed site design to the maximum extent practicable through adequate design landscape buffers and through the placement of buildings and accessory structures such as the detention basins. 3D, landscape buffers will ensure that the proposed uses are adequately buffered from one another and from surrounding public and private property because a new landscape buffer along the west property line will mitigate headline impacts on adjacent residences along Sylvan Avenue resulting from traffic on the new Campus Drive and Central parking lot. 3E, stormwater management measures will be employed to satisfy the city ordinances because stormwater runoff from the new impervious surfaces will be managed through detention ponds and natural landscape features. 4E, safe, convenient, and well-defined pedestrian or well-defined bicycle and pedestrian circulation within and to and from the site will be provided because internal sidewalks connect to the campus internally and to the surrounding public right-of-ways. 5, the scale and design of the proposed development does not place an excessive burden on services currently furnished or may be required by the city or other public agency because the cost of any new public, private, or private infrastructure will be borne by the school, and the development plan will address existing traffic impacts in the public way. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. The standard set A approvals and that any, number 2, that after evaluation with affected property owners on Sylvan Avenue, a landscape buffer meeting the requirements of section 5.11.12 shall be planted along the west property line to mitigate headlight impacts of the internal drive on the residential properties. 3, that there should be a dumpster.
Yep, would you like me to?
Yes,
Okay,
that'd be great.
I have 3 suggested conditions based on our conversation. That a permanent trash enclosure meeting the requirements of section 5.2.13 shall be constructed. That the width of the internal drive lane shall be the minimum width necessary per the city fire marshal and traffic safety engineer. And that site lighting shall comply with Section 5.2.19.d1A, which states that lighting levels shall be reduced by at least 50% of the full operational levels within 30 minutes after the close of business, and that the drive, and then lastly, that the drive aisles of the central lot be reduced to 22 feet.
Yes. And then, would that be number 7, that this approval shall take effect immediately?
Yes.
Okay.
I do have an amendment. Your standard conditions recommended striking 2, 5, and 7.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
I have a motion. Do I have support?
Support.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay. Now, going back to my agenda, I believe, I don't know where I put it, but that it is time to, Planning Commission discussions before public comment, but do we have anything for Planning Commission discussion? No. Okay.
Very quick.
Okay.
Because the secretary is not here today, could you designate someone to, such as Commissioner Yonker, to
Yes.
sign the resolutions?
Yes, I will designate Commissioner Yonker as our vice chair to sign the resolutions.
You got a
That would
motion for
normally,
that, or is that just, are you allowed to just
I'm
Chair.
using my authority to designate you.
share maybe? Right?
Yes.
All right, great.
Okay. Any additional discussion?
I had a question, and it brought up with public comment from the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, and I just am wondering, I'm very, very minorly familiar with that, but if there is anything, does that become a plan such as, area-specific plans or anything else that would influence our work, and how does that get integrated into what we do?
So I would say, yes, it influences your work in that the Community Master Plan did support the recommendations of the CAP plan. So you can utilize that as part of your condition that references compliance with the master plan. To utilize it as a basis for denial solely, I think that would be definitely challenging because your only one condition speaks to the master plan. And that since we have not completed the zoning ordinance update, there is no specific objective standard code requirement that has yet been incorporated to implement the CAP plan. There was a fairly robust discussion at City Commission on the CAP plan. I was certainly happy to send you those links where the City Commission went through the plan and prioritized certain recommendations that they felt, I believe were in their top 20, if I remember correctly. If that would be helpful, I don't know if it's as material, but certainly welcome to watch that. Is that helpful? It was a yes, maybe, and?
Yes, kind of. Yeah. Yep, I get it. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, then I will open it up for public comment. Seeing no one approach, I will close that, but I will acknowledge that we did receive some general correspondence from a member of the public, which was received in our packet and reviewed by Planning Commission in that space. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you. There you go. I told you, Brian. This time.